pleasure to host Alain Waha, City of Burahapol, and has various advisory roles. So I've been following Alain on socials for a while and watched his presentations, and I thought it would be great to have him on the show. Thanks a lot.
Hi. Well, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to have a chat.
So Elaine, my first question is like, if I were to ask, what are top three highlights of your career till date? What would those be?
Highlights. That's. Yeah, I mean, I love changing and crossing culture. So I suppose going to university in the UK. I'm originally from Manchester, from Belgium, but I went to Manchester. That was, transformational. Um, and I went and did aero engineering, and we got to play with supercomputers and wind tunnels. And it was really cool. And then I suppose the next transition. I suppose I was in tech in Cambridge, and I was getting my hands dirty, and then going into automotive. That was quite exciting, leaving like deep tech and programming behind and looking at business models, and that took me to Asia. So I think that was, really exciting in the early 2000s to be exploring early internet business models and distribution in Asia and China in 2002, 2003. Really exciting, and internet sales in India in 2004. Yeah, and then in 2000, I suppose the next big moment was 2007, when I came to this industry by complete accident, and I chose to. That there's a change of culture, but not geography. It's a change of culture of understanding what architects do, what engineers do, what contractors do, what developers do. It was a complete revelation for somebody that spent their time deep in code or in automotive business.
That's incredible. So, like, and now I'm curious, like, when based on your journey, like, how do you identify the trends and opportunities in a particular discipline or domain, and also become like an expert from like newbie in a new domain?
Oh, it's a huge journey, but then as a visitor initially, you see things that others don't see. I think you can be really an amazing at anything, very very deep. But I discovered very early that when I went to university in Manchester, I was an outlier. I was interesting as an outlier. At first, it was my second language. And I knew things that others didn't, and they knew things and have had life experiences that, it was really different, was complete different framework of reference. And that exchange is very, very rich. And so, as long as you're curious and respectful and trying to understand, you see things, and you create value and create conversations that, simply by the act of being a visitor, you,
Hmm.
you create that tension and that exploration.
Yeah, curiosity is big. Uh, we have a topic of this show on platform and platformization in AC, and I would like you to give us a deep dive into like what these terms mean and the opportunities ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very long word, and it's quite a sexy word at the moment, platform. So I thought, that if it can stimulate the conversation, it's quite interesting. And actually, it's a word that recurs around platform business model, around digital platform, and right now we in the UK spend the last 4 years around construction innovation and transforming construction innovation through platform PDFMA. So and I've been very closely working there too. So I am quite fascinated by platforms, and I think it can present it can present a point of view, a conversation. I think that's my starting point anyway.
I see. So I could see your presentation on the slide, the third platform.
Yeah, so again, it's about creating those conversation and approaching it with a different point of view and try to understand something new. So I'm not trying to do a lecture, but ultimately just reflecting back and saying, if you restate what happened in the 1970s and 80s with the emergence of TCP/IP networks, which we now call the internet and the World Wide Web, and then try to move that forward and try to make sense of it, and then try to think, might that help us understand the built environment, that and kind of create a narrative to where we're heading for. That was really the purpose of this conversation. And it starts from when I arrive, not quite immediately, when I arrive in the built environment in 2007, BIM was already a thing. And people were trying to make sense of it. And I suppose I started from a point of view of a newbie, and I tried to make sense of it. And I said, right, BIM is how we digitalize the built environment, in the same way as we digitalized retail or digitalized music. This is how we digitalize the built environment. But we have to then think about, okay, what happens in those other sectors where I was, and what that might then translate to in our sector. And the first thing I say is just stop talking about BIM. You're just going to hurt yourself. Just think about technology invading our industry. And we know that we are living through very transformative moments in terms of technology. 12 Gutenberg moments, and the word's chosen because Gutenberg is not just a printing press. It's the start of the Renaissance. It reshapes our communication, and knowledge gets spread, and then drive a fundamental transformation. And then taken 19 years explaining the worldwide as a semantic graph knowledge across a TCP/IP network, which the comment of his supervisor at CERN was, it's quite vague, but seemingly exciting. That was the real live comment on the proposal of building the semantic web. And then this patent actually is the patent of Facebook that is trying to say, let's not just connect information, let's connect people, and create social timelines, etc. And we do know that this is we're quite far on, right? It's 2004, and then for quite a while now, Snowblind, where it talks about the digital mirror, are we seeing the same kind of moment as we saw, platformization of information and the web, platformization of social interactions, and now platformization of the built environment? What if that's what's happening? Do we have evidence where we see digital twinning, we see gamification, game engines, we're seeing, the layering of our data application using and data networks and data infrastructures, and then the physical infrastructure connecting to it, and the shift from desktop-based application to cloud-based application. So we really see these trends that are speaking to that. And that's when you start saying, right, okay, this could be a platformization moment. So let's understand platforms. And certainly, for example, in terms of the business of platforms, we understand that you've got very different types of platform. You can have a platform inside your company. You can have supply chain platform, supply chain networks, industrial clouds, and then you can have industry platforms, like we are speaking on a PC, which is the original product platform for the personal computer, created by IBM. But we're not using IBM. We're not using IBM chips. We're not using IBM software. We, we're in a platform environment that is very diverse, and yet is reinforcing. And then we've got these concept of transaction platform, innovation platforms. So we understand, two-sided marketplaces. We understand applications on top of platforms. We understand innovation. The original IBM PC platform doesn't have hard drive, doesn't have high resolution graphical interfaces. It doesn't have a mouse. It really is a very basic platform, and yet it grows because it's an innovation platform as well, which then creates a reinforcement effect. So that's the question. And then, of course, just to finish there, to say, right, now that we understand that we might be at this edge, at this iPod moment for our industry, what's our industry about, right? And my favorite way of explaining this is to say, right, remember that those that were in the music industry in the 90s thought they were in the music industry, but actually they were in the plastic industry. And we know that because they started selling us a different type of plastic and saying it was better. We went from vinyl to polycarbonate, and it was a physical sale of a piece of plastic that occupied and was the dominant business model of that industry. And we know where that ends up. It's completely digital now. It took 30 years, but it was rethought in terms of purpose. And of course, we have a much more important purpose than that of mobility, for example. We've got a purpose of creating the built environment that provides us safety and drives conversation and drives behavior and drive experience. So it's a very exciting moment for this generation to think about, what's the purpose of the industry, what's the purpose of the architects, the custodians, those that are creating, sustaining, maintaining, shaping the built environment, and how might they mobilize technology to do that better.
That's amazing. Like quite thought-provoking discussion. Uh, I'm just amazed, like to your point of like people who thought who were in music industry were actually in the plastic industry. Like for AC, does that mean all the design, like let's say the architects and engineers are doing, we are in the data business, like building, uh, like 3D data, or like how does that, like I'm just curious.
Well, I think you hear it, right? The architects know that they get paid for their deliverables, and deliverables and A0 drawings. So they're really challenged by the fact that, the deliverables is the tangible transaction. The deliverables are the contractual deliverables that you're held to, that you assure, that you insure, etc., and that you can sell. And so you end up using technology to try to get these deliverables, out of out of your practice quicker, better, etc. And we invent Revit. So, we have a fantastic technology, but we use it to make drawings. And for me, that is exactly what happened with the CD. We had a piece of plastic and we digitized the music. We went, digital format, etc. We started having electronic keyboards. We redefined a type of music, the electronic, electro, techno music, and all that. But actually,
Yeah.
maybe techno is a good type of music, but CD didn't really move the needle, right? I mean, so we were deploying all this technology, all this hardware. It really felt like the Sony and Philips of this world, whose business was to sell you hardware, went all on digital, completely forgetting that the purpose of music is to create entertainment and to link the artist with an audience. And um, why why would you spend all this effort and energy to just change the type of plastic?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really get your point. And I'm just to build on the analogy, like music went from like static form of delivery to like streaming and the form of which it contained. We had the iPod moment after the CD. Now we have like the Spotify and like other platformization. So PC, you mentioned about gamification in AEC, where like now we are seeing real-time streaming, cloud streaming of our assets. Uh, I'm just curious, like what's coming next?
Yeah, I think we should look back a little bit, because ultimately we only think about music as an industry in the 1950s. But what was the industry at the time of Mozart? Right? At the time of Mozart, it's about performance and it's about concert halls. And even before that, it's about creating experiences. And, let's remember that, this plastic moment of music was quite short in the history of music over the millennia that mankind has used. So think about it in those terms. Look back to the Renaissance architects, and what they're trying to do is create built environment first to be safe, and then have societal moment, right? Why do we create these amphitheaters? Is to support the societal, the games, the circus in Roman time, the conversation and the plays in Greek times. That's deeply societal, right? It's not a business of doing drawings. It's not the business of being in real estate development. It's the business of creating an intervention on the built environment to support an experience. And so, or road building, ultimately road building, the Romans didn't build roads because they think it was good business. It allowed communication and control over an empire, 2,500 years before, by the time we get in Northern Europe and is the Renaissance again, we are back, we're on the horseback, and you can by horse get about 60 kilometers from your starting point. So you see that European provinces are about 120 kilometers end to end, because that's how far communication goes into a single day. So but if it's further, by the time the Duke gets to hear that an army is invaded, they're already halfway in his territory by the time he can move. So it's indefensible. So think about it in those ways. And if we then say, right, so okay, I'm now got completely radically new technologies, right? What is it that I'm going to do with them? And I think gamification around multiplayer games, people coming into that digital design, that digital environment, and then having agency over the built environment. I think that's a really interesting concept. The architect at the moment thinks this would work,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have to build it before we find out. And it proposes it to the mayor of the city that asks his planner to review it on PDFs and put some notices up and say, I hereby, seek consult. Do you have any, views on this proposed development?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Where is mass participation? What do you want your
Yeah.
street? Here is a street. We're going to remove all the cars. What's your proposal? All the millennials, all the digital native jumping into a mass parallel gaming environment saying, well, no, my streets needs to be there. And then the fire authority says, yeah, but, it's going to compromise fire response. So we need some ways of clearing spaces and getting our trucks through here. Great. Yeah. But if we don't have any road, how do I get my provisions to my house? Oh, maybe we can, get the conversation going. Multi-party conversation inside the gaming environment, that would be exciting. That would be a real act of democratization that answers the question we have now, right? Because all villages or streets or cities used to be designed, organically as population grew slowly. All cities or our territories evolved in over millennia, and now we're trying to do it with machines and with planning processes over weeks, and we still complain it's too fast or too slow. But actually, I'd argue, we've not enabled mass participation to shape what it is that we want. So, just
Interesting.
there.
Yeah, like I was thinking like in reinforcement learning we have like agents with different purpose. Like in built environment, like we can have like building occupants as one agents, building services folks as another agents, have different constraints around it in this multiplayer environment, and let organically or evolutionary way like optimize the building performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether we do biomimicry, but digital biomimicry by setting up an agent ecosystem that will accelerate 3,000 years of city organic development to say, right, if you had 3,000 years and let the citizens evolve it, that's what it would look like. I love Townscaper, for example. Townscaper is a great, way of instantiating a city through a genetic algorithm, really. And let a bit of agency to the designer, but don't force the designer to, you know, it's back to SimCity, right? It's that, being the city mayor, see what happens. But it's temporal, so that's another thing that is even more complicated for us. So I think urban planners, city authorities, designers are going to have a phenomenal journey here, to try to really reorganize that conversation between the user, making a user-centric built environment possible again.
I see. I have a question on like the mediums of creation, like in music industry, like we have seen people creating directly from instruments to people like doing remix culture or like composability. Like in architecture, we still are doing like sketching. Some people are doing in VR and sketching in VR, but still like on precedent we study precedent and we adopt the abstract forms and translate and evolve our design. But like what are some new mediums of creation in architecture itself which hasn't been explored?
I think we're at the beginning of it, aren't we? I think if we draw that parallel, I'm not sure it's entirely possible, but let's try. We the, the, there is a new genre. Maybe it's called parametricism. You know, Patrick Schumacher will kill me for that, but they clearly is an extension of the palette. For me, for example, Avicii is a really interesting musician because he's a completely new type of musician that actually doesn't play an instrument, and so it's quite exciting, really, to think about how this digital medium becomes a creative, a creative expansion. David Hockney, had this season through the COVID period. He retreated in Normandy, and he used his iPad to create, collage of scale. It's phenomenal. It's just an extension, it doesn't detract, I don't think, from anything. It just can augment, or it can create yet a new genre. That in itself is exciting. But I think it's more maybe utilitarian than this, in the sense, when I like Daniel Davis, when he was still at WeWork, talking about architecture at scale, because we talk about precedent, and yes, we do, and we do study, but do we really understand from a user-centric way what works? Really? Do we? I mean, how much time do you spend using your design? Right? Because that's what we've learned from the ability to capture data for free. Because we talk about digital transformation, but we don't tend to spend too much time explaining what we mean. It's like a laptop, or it must be. No, there are some really useful definitions. And one of my favorite ones is to say that the marginal cost of information goes to zero. So there are lots of things that you could do, but you don't do because it's too expensive to find out. But what if finding out was free? I.e., the cost of that information goes to zero. Now you would find out. If societally it was acceptable to monitor every night's sleep of every human sleeping on the planet, we'd figure out what makes a good night's sleep. We could even figure out mechanism to encourage architects and developers to sell us good night's sleep, instead of just, using an artificial shortage in the market. There's abundance of capital, there's abundance of land, and there's abundance of construction material, and yet we have shortage of housing. How is that possible? Well, it's the same way as there's a shortages of Ferrari, or there were shortages of ladders when you lived in the Soviet Union. It's artificial. Right? Now think about that for a minute. What I'm saying is that the housing shortage, the lack of affordable housing in our Western world is purely an artificial societal contract that we are creating, we have built, right? Now, that sounds very much like, a lot of great artists not getting published because DNR, the developer of music, didn't like that artist. Let's get round that. Let's get round them. Let's build the YouTube of architecture and development, and let's get a roof on everybody's heads. Now that'd be, quite an outcome.
Do you think like Metaverse as a platform or medium will maybe bridge the gap between end user and architects who are like
Yeah,
being constrained?
I'm really excited about the metaverse in a very specific way. And that is the definition of the metaverse around social agency. So if you combine, Metaverse as a social agency platform and built world, and say, right, look, before you build it, give some social agency over what you're proposing to build. That is really, really interesting. Now, like all good technologies and stock market and transaction platform, you need to put liquidity in it. And so, stock market, how much of it is actually transacting of money getting into a company, and how much is it about, people trading to improve their portfolio? But nonetheless, it's a great way to distribute capital into companies. What if that social agency, that market, we only build things that became valuable in the metaverse? It'd be quite interesting, just saying, because it means that already societally we voted that we want to see that one. Not this one, that one. Why? Because people have voted for it. They bought it. They're saying it's more valuable. Let's now build it. It will encourage speculation in other ways, but actually we will have brought the voice of the user
Hmm.
back into architecture.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've seen like metaverse as a means for consensus, like voting, better incentive will allow like community to participate more. So there's potential an opportunity there.
But
Yeah.
certainly, I mean, we've only seen the beginning, I think, and like always, the first the first most valuable app was a red dot, right? I mean, all silly. And then the second most downloaded app, I think, or first most, that was this pint of beer. You tipped your phone and the beer top, poured out. I mean, at the beginning, it's quite noddy. And you don't judge it by that. You have to have a slightly longer term view and say, can something better emerge? Where is this going? And I think I don't know where the metaverse is, but it's not. It's not as if we've not been predicting it. It's not as if Second Life didn't happen. It's not as if the Minecraft generation doesn't exist, right? It's it's a continuum of things that are emergent, right? So I don't think that it's an outlier and a poof. It is just it needs to be seen in a continuum of evolution.
I see. And like when you were describing like about like artists who don't do music but still are musician, like I was thinking about like a lot of this AI algorithms are now like doing like generative building plans. It could be like starting point in architecture where we might be at a point where we can't differentiate a floor plan designed by an architect versus floor plan by an AI. And then one could question what it means to be an architect, like giving or designing those AI algorithms or giving the input versus doing the actual sketching.
Yes, it's a really interesting one, and again, this conversation keeps on popping up. Um, so we had it in music. The New York Times top opera, I think, was written by an algorithm. It was done to prove that ultimately it can be done. Should it be done? That's I think we need to be deliberate on that. My view is that we, um, we, we we're really challenged in the built environment because it's really hard. Technology needs to be radically cheap at information level, transaction level, for it to be amenable to the quantum of information we need to integrate. It's this master builder concept. It's transdisciplinary and it's transscalar. And the way we fixed it as our built environment become more complicated is we've created specialism and we've created drawings at different scales. And so we've really um, you know, disaggregated our industry. And how do we reintegrate it? How do we get the brains back its control, its decision, its choices? I think that that's what we need in our industry. So let me give an example on this, right? When we design a chip, the vision for the chip and what we're trying to do is set by the human, and then the AI, which we call AI, I just call it ML, just propagates the consequences of these design choices based on things that we've seen before, so that you can already anticipate at different scale what are the consequences of the choices you're making. So if it's an architect and you are shaping a building, normally you don't go inside the building and do the floor layout because you've not got planning and that comes later. But what if the computer could already instantiate and says, right, your flat efficiencies is, it's beautiful, but the flat efficiencies are not good. So, in three state milestone later, you're going to run into a problem that you won't be able to undo. Now, that would be very valuable. Now, you're saying, oh, the AI has instantiated the floor plans. Yes, I'm not saying those are the ones we're going to build. The AI has informed my decision process earlier, bringing information from a scale that I can't see with the human brain, that I can't possibly anticipate because it's going to come in 3 months' time. That I think is really much less scary than calling it AI suddenly and the flat is being designed by a computer. No, 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 no. Let the human in later on, it can continue. But we're going to get some fixing, aren't we? Eventually, we're going to have the massing, we're going to get the budget, we're going to get the planning, we're going to get the finance, and those things are baked in. And everybody says, oh, yeah, well, if I had been able to anticipate. Yeah, you can't. You've reached the limit of the A0 drawing and the human brain. Anybody else can help? You know, it's like that. That's how you play chess, right? If I'm playing chess with a grandmaster, I'm not gonna beat him. I'm gonna bring a computer alongside me, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna have a pretty good go. They're gonna bring a computer next to them, and then
Yeah.
he'll get me again because he knows how to use so augmented human is what I'm arguing for, not a replaced or displaced human, and we've seen that across history.
Did I lose him? Oh. Meanwhile, we can wait. Hmm. That was a good conversation. Mm. Oh man, the resort lost power. I don't know. Should we wrap up or should we do part two? Okay, okay. Good luck. We'll see everything in this live stream of like the resort he's living lost power and they got connection back. So we'll see him soon. I appreciate your patience. Do-do-do-do. Yay! You're back. Can you hear me? Hello? Hmm, I could see you. Okay. Almost there. Almost there. Oh, lost him again. Can you hear me now? Ooh. Oh, okay. Hmm. What can we do about this? Hmm. Mic is not working. I'm not sure if.
Hello? Hello? Does that work? I think that might work now. Is that working now? No. Yes? Yes? Yes, yes. Hello? Back? Should be back.
Hello.
It should be back. It's working now. It's back. At least on my
Looks like
end.
you're speaking from the maybe. Oh yeah, I think I can hear you.
Okay?
Okay,
Is
okay.
it good? Right.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll see how we see. There we go. We were live. Every so often the live shows get broken, but there we go. I've moved to my to my hotspots. I've got the light back, but I'm not sure the hotspot from the Red Sea is going to necessarily be high performance. So I think we got interrupted rudely when I said something, um, and there we go. Where were we?
Yeah, even even I lost track. Yeah, I can. Yeah, honestly, you were
We
saying.
were deep in AI, right? And
Yeah.
we, we were talking about, I have, a couple of rules about AI. Really, first, don't call it, artificial intelligence. I rather call it augmented intelligence. Um, and typically we call it AI until it's actually working and doing something. Like Oh my God, it recognized my voice. It's AI. No, it's voice recognition. Oh my God, it recognized the pictures. It's artificial. No, it's image recognition. Oh my God, we used to call it fuzzy logic, and always what's what's impossible is called AI until it's done, and then it's called something else. That's the first thing. And it's not a new conversation, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about the Turing test and the imitation game, and so the movie. But I think people absolutely miss the point of the Turing test. The Turing
Mhm.
test is not an AI test. The
Yep.
Turing test is to say, once it's fooled you, is it intelligent? That was the question of Alan Turing. He says, once it's passed the imitation game, will you say that that machine is intelligent? And that is a very profound question. So you see AlphaGo play an amazing move that no humans played before, and you say it's beautiful. Is that AlphaGo machine now creative and beautiful? Well, yes, it is, but only because a human looks at
Mhm.
it and say it's creative and beautiful. Another machine looking at it will just say it's a good move. So actually, creativity, empathy, fundamental human quality that underpins what we would recognize as artificial intelligence. So you're going to need to have another machine to recognize that and say, "Ooh, that's creative and that's beautiful," by some kind of metric that that machine has. And then that's why you get these questions about, is AI possible without physicality, blah blah blah. But I think it's very important to understand that this is not a new debate, right? Alan Turing invents the computer to answer and prove Gödel's theorem of incompleteness, and in the process creates a computable number, and in the process asks the question: this machine one day will pass the imitation game, and at that moment, will we ask ourselves, is that machine intelligent? Right? It's not like we've walked into the 21st century and say, "Oh, machines are becoming intelligent. I wonder if they're intelligent." So I think architecture has got a very, 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 very long way, because it's the human that live into those spaces and that experience that built environment that declare it beautiful, not the AI that's proposed it.
Yeah, like you hit the nail. Also like definition of creativity is like based on like one person's frame of reference, the criteria, like something which is creative now would not might be creative like a year from now. Yeah.
So in fact, as soon as we invent computer, we then start talking about design framework. John Giro does that, and then within that you define creativity, and within creativity, then you get to, it's a non-obvious, valuable design solution. Okay, but what makes it valuable is your frame of reference, not the solution intrinsically by itself. So the computer has no idea whether he's being creative or not, because he has no idea of the fitness of the solution and unique. The uniqueness, yes, but the fitness, no. Which is back to my AlphaGo point, and that's defined into computational design by John Giro, 1985, 1989. I need to check. So it's not new. It's not new.
Hmm.
It's what's new is that we're sitting on top of an exponential technology, which means that every 18 months we're doubling. So it's just extraordinary, because you just have to wait a very little time, for quadrupling and then a sextupling of the power. And now you've got these GPUs that are doing n-dimensional regression through which they detect an image of a cat, and they don't know what a cat is, they don't know what an image is, but they can say the catness image, the catness criteria of this image is high, it's a cat. That are the nowhere in its wildest dream did Alan Turing think that it was only going to take a century to have, on a cloud scale, as a utility, the ability to play the imitation game at scale and for free, right? I mean, just like, this, my phone has face detection, it recognizes Alain. I mean, it's just amazing. My
Yep.
phone is intelligent, it recognizes me. No, that it's got facial recognition. How does that
Yeah.
work? Because we've got machine learning working.
Yeah, yeah, like at the end of the day, it's just like no one treats stats or regression like in the same skeptical manner as like AI, but at the end of the day, like it's also like doing that prediction. So
You make two predictions, right, that are equally mathematically valid, but one predicts the share price based on sunspot numbers, and the other one predicts share price based on occupancy of geospatial slots as measured by satellite image. One sunspot satellite image, geospatial geography satellite image, a human can say, right, if this share is retail and the satellite images that they are looking at is car park, then I can see there's a causality that if car parks are full, retailers are doing a good business and the share price is going to go up. But if it's sunspot numbers and retailers, no chance. However, if it's sunspot number and maybe air conditioning unit sales, and there's a circadian number, a circadian um, cycle that's in fact activated by sunspot numbers, then suddenly you say, different image, different share. It's
mm,
not related to car park, but it is related. Only you understand causality. Um,
yeah,
Machine learning is not there.
yeah, that's a very good point. I'm curious to know like why we haven't seen like AI applications in AEC at a massive adoption rate.
Oh, I think the answer is quite simple. It's data sets. Ultimately, TensorFlow works quite quickly, and then TensorFlow 3D, we had to wait 10 years, right? Um, there, that's the first thing. It's a harder problem, and then we don't have the data sets. So, if you can analyze massive data sets that are data aligned, that you don't have to data wrangle, and that are available, that are insights available. Now, show me, where is the data set that tells you that people are having a good life? Where the data set of people are having a good night's sleep? I mean, like a big hotel chain may have, I don't know, 40,000 hotel rooms, doesn't have any normalizing data of geospatial description of those 40,000 rooms, has no idea what's happening in the room, and maybe we don't want them to know. They don't have noise sensor, vibration sensor, humidity sensors. And let's say they did, these sensors are owned by hundreds of different property companies. So, how would they get the right to get to those sensors? And then after that, they need to data wrangle the geospatial, the data sensors they don't have data with, and then find insights on what gives you a good night's sleep. Show me how you do that. And yet you say, I want to analyze 40,000 transactions of people buying blue sweaters on the internet, and you've got it immediately. They buy them between 8 and 9 o'clock on bright days. I mean, whatever. accidents. An insurance company gets the accident data rates and gets an insights on what makes a good policy holder with low risk, or a bad policy holder with you get access to data sets that are large scale and normalizable. And I think that was the point of Daniel Davis on architectural scale. You know, they were one of the first ones that were both computational and had access to data at scale. To say, I have a floor plate. How big should my meeting rooms be based on the tenants I have? That's a great question. And by the time you have 50 floor plates and you've got meeting room data telling you hour by hour where they're booked, where they're occupied, by how many people, that gets you a really rich data set very, very quickly, right? But you have to have the sensor, the permission to have the sensor, and the booking data. And then you have to have an economic driver to mine that data, which for them was, if there are too many meeting rooms, people use them without booking and I lose revenue. If they've got too few meeting rooms, people complain and move out. And certainly I could maximize revenue by having more meeting room because they're always booked. So you've got an economic driver to mine the data, you have access to the data sets, and then you don't have an idea of, well, how much data do I have to have before I can normalize it and make sense of it? Well, every WeWork is the same. So it was quite pre-normalized. And by the time I think they had 30 or 40 floor plates, they had their answer. They knew how many meeting rooms to put and of what size. And you saw the built environment within WeWork evolve with meeting rooms that had, more whiteboards, meeting rooms that didn't have any chairs and had sit-ons, etc. You saw the built environment being redesigned by humans, but guided by data insights.
I see. Yeah, I'm just like provoked by like we might need like a whole like content and data pipeline for the whole building life cycle, which can be like converted for using that data can be converted for machine learning, but also like like continuous, like in software there is like CI/CD, continuous deployment. What if like building services or building lifestyle has this continuous improvement, continuous deployment based on real time data?
100%. I think that's why I was mentioning hotel rooms, because you can see that the clock speed of data, and most hotel chain refurbish about 20% of their rooms a year, because a hotel room after 5 years is really tired, and they add about 10%. They have a 10% churn. So they add 10% of capacity. So you've got development cycle that you can insert your insights in, and you've got a data clock cycle of saying, every night I've got a feedback. And so you can see that in those, you absolutely get into this continuous development cycle. And it's really interesting because as soon as you go into this continuous development cycle, you're talking about regenerative design and you're talking about agile design. I don't know what the market will be. I don't know what the customers are going to be wanting to buy from me. So, if you look at fashion, for example, it's really interesting that, Zara as a fashion business chooses to have a less efficient supply chain from a point of view of absolute cost down, but chooses to have a supply chain that's highly agile to follow the market. Now, fashion is obviously, no, is known for being fickle, and if you have to make something and design it in January and put it in the factories in June and ship them in July so that they hit the shops in October for the winter season, right? You think about the fashion designer is needing to guess in January what's going to be fashionable the following winter. Hard. Now, what if your supply chain was different? I seed the shops, and then whatever sells, I remake. Yeah, you'd have to have a much shorter supply chain and much agile supply chain, but you'd be able to sell everything you make. You
Hmm.
wouldn't have discount at the end of the season, and you wouldn't have missed sales because the best sellers get sold out, right? That's Zara. Imagine the Zara of construction, the Zara of housing. Just say, okay, I need a slab, right? But what's on that slab? Well, let's see. Let's build things and get that continuous upgrading, and get generations of products in the same site. See what sells.
Yep, I see. Like moving a bit line, what are like some interesting technologies or startups you have seen in contact or prop tech space?
Oh, I mean, it's an amazing, and a really rich ecosystem right now, right? Really, I think it'd be very difficult to pick one or the others. I'd, I'd start by really asking the question, how do you get yourself into an elevator that takes you towards Spotify? Because do you want to be innovating against the needs of the current state of the industry, or do you want to be in a position where, as the industry evolves, it goes differently? So for example, for me, like clash detection and laser scanning are not what the industry need. Coordinate design coordination is not clash detection. Clash detection is a failure of poor design coordination. So can we go um, from a state of we picking up mistakes to avoiding mistakes, clash avoidance, and this in which we call design coordination, design augmentation, and really really interesting thought. I mean, and you remember Brett Young and Building SP doing that, very early on. But if I'm really interested at the moment around construction worker, I think construction work is really an interesting topic. For me, the question is, why is the worker still in the site? Um, you know, we have a knowledge issue, we have a safety issue, we have a productivity issue. Time to say, right, actually, people like to work in factories and like to be knowledge workers. How do we make construction worker knowledge workers rather than laborers, right? So that's so for me, worker augmentation. I really like my friends at XYZ Reality, just because the question here is, what's the augmented worker? Well, what I know about the augmented worker is that he's in the site and he's wearing a hard hat. So I want to build the interface that allows that hard hat to be hands free, the iPad of the future, right? And when we started bringing iPads in the site in 2011, 2012, people thought we were insane. What are you doing? They're going to be stolen. They're going to break. They're like, and and they were right, but the price went down, and so now you have Procore, you've got PlanGrid, you've got PlanRadar, etc. But let's go like the next level. The wearable, the actual thing that the guy has in the site is a wearable, so a wearable helmet. I think these are the kind of things we can see. It works today, but it works tomorrow, right? It's
Hmm.
you've got the augmented construction factory worker, right? If the site is a factory, then the guy needs to be in his factory running the factory. What does it? Does he have a laptop in his hands? Really? I mean, no. I mean, it, it's like saying somebody's got a clipboard in their hand and one of these, Nokia 6110s. And just move 10 years on. Remember exponential years, right? So we went from 2000 to 2008. The phones moved quite a bit. We had the Nokia 95, we had WAP phones, etc. And then we've gone from iPhone 1 to iPhone 15, I mean, just look at the difference in generation and power. We've got a tricorder in our hands, and so in 2025, it's just mind boggles, right? I mean, at the moment,
Mhm.
those WhatsApp messages that are coming in by audio are disturbing, mildly disturbing, and replying to them, etc. But it's still, I think we've only just seen the beginning of technology coming into the built environment.
Yeah, and like especially with the wearable, like if wearable has an operating system, like you can always upgrade. Like I'm thinking more in the AR glasses, but I'm not sure where like what kind of wearable you were like mentioning. But like upgradable like on-site devices, like which keeps up to date with how the technology and computing power grows is
Yeah,
also like how do we make like future
absolutely.
adaptable? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, XYZ Reality is a construction helmet that is essentially an AR glass, and so it creates that interface in the helmet. Hololens in a helmet, essentially with the OS for construction rather than the OS for gaming. But you've got those technologies. I think obviously in the design side, I think we're going to see an acceleration of the design augmentation. You can see what happens with high power, in capturing the knowledge as a composable, extensible knowledge system, and so you're capturing that knowledge. But I think what we want to be able to do is start pushing knowledge, transdisciplinary knowledge, and transdisciplinary knowledge to reintegrate the art of making. If we really go into product design, then we have to reintegrate the user, the designer, and the maker. That's how we design a product. And in construction and design today, unfortunately, the user is very distant. There's a proxy called the architect, and then you've got the design team, and they are the designer, but they really disconnected from the making. They assume a constructability. They don't design for the construction process. And that is because we instantiate the built environment through a contracting process. So the design is an input to a contracting process, not a construction process. So you design for contracts. You make deliverable for contract. You don't make deliverable for construction, production, manufacture. Imagine what happens when you declare a production system, and then that production system gets reflected into the design system. Then you have design manufacturing aware, design optimization, and then ultimately you can, as an architect and a designer, anticipate what the product really will be, not some kind of sketch or even a sketch turned into a technical drawing that went into a contract. We know that's not what you get at the end of a contracting process. You get some physical objects. It's not tied to the experience that was designed. It's contracted to a physical object that then gets degraded, so that it meets the new constraints of risk and cash.
I see.
If you
Um,
think about the frustration of the architect, do they really are they really happy on the way the buildings turn out?
hmm.
Hand on heart.
That's a good point. Hmm. Yeah, like I have seen like a lot of like contact prop tech startups saying like robotics on site, or like fintechs, supply chain side. Are there any areas which like no one is addressing yet in this space, but there's like a good opportunity as we move ahead?
Um, no, that's a good question. I think depends how broad your brush is. I think there all the good ideas are out there. It's like at the beginning of the internet, everybody was indexing, some in smarter ways than others, some in ways that gained traction earlier than others. But it wasn't as if um, people were saying, oh, I'm going to have an amazing idea, I'm going to index the internet, and then they created Google. No, no, no. There were hundreds of people indexing the internet. They just got better at it. Um, and so I would really focus on execution, traction, differentiation, scalability, rather than mine is a better mousetrap. Mine is a better indexing. Put it in the context of your business scalability or your or your traction, um, or your ability to execute. Ultimately, that's really important. So I don't want to be a predictor of the future. That'd be foolish. But I would say, uh, for me, if somebody is pursuing an idea that somebody already had, that's good news.
I see. And like based on your career, like what was the most challenging point in your whole journey?
Oh, that's I suppose yesterday or right. Um, I think you have to you, it's not a career, it's a life, right? So I think you succeed at what you're passionate with, and you need to be able to reconcile that with the other contracts you've got with your family or your relatives or your friends or your conscience. And I think that's ultimately is the hardest bit. Is to achieve that reconciliation. The Japanese have a word for it. They call it ikigai. And so I think when you're stretched, when you're hard, when it's difficult, it's probably because you've strayed too far away from a point where well, do you need money to live? Well, only as much as you've committed to need. I think it's Elon Musk that says, I knew I could make it when I knew that I could live in New York on $5 a day. um, and I think that's a strong realization to say. Ultimately, that means I really have you know got myself to a point where I have no hesitation. I can make $5 a day. I can survive. Therefore, I can pursue what I think is right. And sometimes you say it's a luxury, and it's probably is a luxury by the time you've committed to a mortgage. Um, but why did you commit to a mortgage? It's yeah. That I think is the hardest thing. Um, and and if you can untie yourself from that, and it's far from easy, um, then you're free to pursue.
So like making decisions which like gives you more financial flexibility or freedom.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that you are very clear. I think that's the thing. And yeah, I think the hardest decisions, I suppose, that we took was to go to Singapore. And the reason why I remember that being a hard decision is we had three young children, two of which were very, very young. Like one was unborn when we committed to move. Um, and why I picked this is because this was transformational for our family. And I often think back, oh my God, we nearly didn't go. We nearly didn't do what was so rich for our family in terms of experience, in terms of career, and in terms of experiences. And it was like that close. And so I can talk about it, because it went the right way.
Hmm.
But honestly, it was like it was, a combination of being mentally in the right place, and of was there to lose, and having actually a very supportive, supportive boss at the time. My company wouldn't pay us to go and visit, and my wife was pregnant, so traveling from London to Singapore was going to be not that easy. But it was like, look, what's there to lose? Let's take that plane. Let's go and have a look. Um, and my boss at the time just went against company policy, and he made it possible. He said, look, take 3 days. We'll figure out the money. Take a 3 day break to Singapore. Go to how insane that was, and we went to Singapore. And I think within like 5 hours or maybe less of being in Singapore, we said, "Oh my God, this is amazing! We have to do this." um, and yeah, and so many times, like the company says, you can't go and visit. My wife, doctor saying you have to fly within the next 48 hours, otherwise I'm not going to give you fit to fly. It was like so many reasons why we could have just been, oh, too hard. um, Life is easy, and that would be, um, my lessons. You only regret what you didn't do.
Yeah, taking that big leap. I have like a rapid fire round to wrap up the interview. So you'll get like 10 to 15 seconds to answer it, and you gotta keep it very brief. Okay, let's do this. Which city is in your travel bucket list?
Are those cities you've not been, or cities that people must go to?
Which you want to go to?
So first, I will say you must go to Ho Chi Minh City. You must go to Western China. Pick any city, Ulaanbaatar. You must visit northern Italy. For me, these are like, places you must go. Where I haven't been, I have never been to South America. So I want to go Santiago de Chile, or that's more than 15 seconds, but you've got two answers.
Yeah, yeah. And who's your role model?
Role model. I have no idea who I'd pick. No idea.
You have like 3 seconds. You can pass on if
Okay,
you're
is it alive, or I think yeah, I think I suppose my godfather, would be the person that guided me, and he's in venture capital now.
got it. Is there any book or like book, technical or business, which made a big impact in your life?
Yeah, I suppose a book about business culture by Charles Handy is a really interesting one. It made me understand culture matters in business, and proposed models. So the Empty Raincoat by Charles Handy is all about culture.
I see. Your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? At the moment, everybody's talking Top Gun. Have to, but no, it would have to be 2001: Space Odyssey.
Hmm. What are your hobbies?
Oh, sailing. Everybody that knows me knows that I'm always sailing.
Yeah. What is one thing that most people don't know about you, but would be surprised to know that?
That I like chocolate? No. What do they know? That I have three children? what would they be? Well, I'm not surprising. I'm not from this industry.
Yeah, yeah. That's a valid answer. Um, I lost the train of thoughts. Uh, how does a day in your life look like?
Right now, on email, but I think people are surprised. I like to talk with people, continuously exchanging, whether it's digitally on WhatsApp, on Slack, always exploring. What's I suppose there was Jim Clark wrote a book called The New Thing. There's another book that was really interesting, and that's I suppose me is always interested in trying to make sense of the new thing.
Mhm. Uh, Piece of advice to student or young professional in AEC.
Live by that Steve Jobs speech, commencement speech. Stay curious, stay young, stay foolish. Makes no sense moving forward. It's you connect the dot backwards. So create a lot of dots, create a lot of experience.
Mhm. And lastly, Elaine, if is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview, but you like to share?
What I'm sure there are hundreds of things. I'd love to have more, Q&A and maybe a thing is to acknowledge that this is not my story. You started with I'm the CTO of Borough Happold. And what does that mean? It means that I'm surrounded and meet amazing people every day, and they are writing stories. You talk about Emilio before, and I think it's very important to celebrate that. It's not me, it's them, and I'm just telling their story, and I'm very grateful for the fact that they're writing that story, they're creating that story, and just like a chief agitator, but also a chief cheerleader of telling their story, not because it's mine. I don't want to appropriate it. I want to state it so that it makes more sense more quickly to more people so they can join.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking like we have all this like super users or like this people passionate in computational tech. Like there's no platform for recognition. Like I don't know, got to do something. There are a lot of architecture awards for best building, but like what about best computational tool or designer, like technologist?
No, it's a very valid point. I think we need. We are a community. I think we're not a community that will be judged by the architecture that was created. That's created by the designer, and they might have internalized that super user behavior you talk about. And Yeah, I think. We ought to think about how do we celebrate those that are sharing and are creating those communities, and and I think we know who would we vote, but maybe we need to create a people's award for the computational communities, and I can already enumerate the top 10 first annual winner, lifetime achievement goes to you'll
Yeah,
get Inkio or Dimitri, or you'll get quickly I think people learning, but I think they would be very supportive of the community and of the
mhm.
fact that they're trying to share, not hold, and I think that should be celebrated, and maybe we should open the voting.
Yeah. Let's say like we are doing a conference in Chicago in October. Let's see if we can accommodate.
Yeah, absolutely. The guys, Ralph, in Dublin has created the information management community, where we're restating Bing more as an information management framework, etc. He's created token of appreciation, and he's created
Mhm.
this amazing network. I can see the same working around the super users.
Correct. Yeah.
So the Randy Deutsch Award for community. Let's get it going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he's my professor. Like I did a course under him. Like I should talk to him. All right. It was indeed a great pleasure hosting you, Elaine, and like I got so many like provoking thoughts with all of your responses. So thanks a lot for bringing so much in-depth knowledge to this space.
Thank you for animating the community, and sorry to finish in the dark. But there we go.
Maybe there is a
Until next time.
until next time. Maybe we should do part two like 6 months from now. But yeah, let's. I'll keep in touch and thanks a lot and have a safe trip back home.
Thank you.
Bye.